Speaker. Tommy Shepherd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is always a degree of excitement in starting any new job, and I feel I will have to have an ongoing challenge of curbing my enthusiasm for this one. Let me begin by paying tribute and a word of thanks to my friend and colleague, the member for Perth and North Perthshire, who preceded me in this role and who, for a long shift, 4.5 years, stood here every Thursday to represent my party in his own inimitable style. I intend to pick up where he left off, and whilst the style may be different, I assure you that the message will be the same. Let me also say that I very much look forward to a weekly verbal joust with the Leader of the House, and I only hope that we don't have a spoilsport Prime Minister who will dash my expectations in an imminent reshuffle and changing that position. Mr. Speaker, turning to the business statement itself, I think I have to observe that given the times in which we are in, it does seem a little self-indulgent to be spending 6 days debating what is essentially a mission statement by the government rather than any specific legislative proposals. I understand that the Queen's speech is an important debate, but is it not time to get on to matters of substance? Even for a government bathing in the afterglow of an election victory, that does seem a little excessive. And I believe there are many things we ought to be discussing that are not in this business statement, and let me offer 3 this morning. The first is the government's proposed departmental reorganisation. It is clearly important that this House is to provide the role of scrutiny of the executive, that we understand what the shape and structure of the executive actually is. So this House ought to be kept up to date in terms of the proposals that are being made for the changes in government departments, so that we can consider what changes we might need to make to our agenda and procedures in order to adequately hold them to account. So can the Leader of the House please update us on what the obstacles to the current reorganisation are, and when they might be resolved, and when we can expect an announcement? Secondly, given the events of the last 7 days, we can see that there is a very precarious military and political situation in the Middle East. And not only that, we can also see how compromised this country is in trying to influence those events. Should not the government be bringing forward an urgent debate on these matters in order that this House can consider how better we can influence these events? And thirdly and finally, Mr. Speaker, let me ask, when is the government going to bring forward a debate recognising the consequences of the 12th of December general election, which for the first time has created a situation within this island where the 2 principal countries have a different political mandate? And is the government going to bring forward proposals in order to acknowledge Scottish public opinion and to accommodate Scottish political representation? Because if it does not, and if it does not recognise that its mandate ends at the Scottish border, then...
Sorry, so one of us is going to have to give way. I'm being very generous. It's your first outing. Please, if you could come to a conclusion. It's meant to be 2 minutes. You're actually on 3. Tommy Shepherd.
Apologies, Mr. Speaker. It is my first time, but I was a sentence away from my conclusion, which is simply to say I caution the government to do this, because if it does not, and if it does not recognise that different mandate, then it is going to become a recruiting sergeant for those in these benches who wish Scotland to have an independent alternative future.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I congratulate the honourable gentleman on his first outing at holding this government to account and bringing on the fast bowling to start with. The Brexit bill started us off, so even before the Queen's speech we passed a major piece of legislation. But that doesn't keep the honourable gentleman happy. What more could we do, Mr. Speaker? The reorganisation of government, as I said, we hope to announce today the share out of select committees. That begins this process. The chairman will then be elected, the committees will be established, they will be adjusted if there are any changes. This is all perfectly normal. There will be regular statements, oral questions are continuing. So that is all in place. It is there. It is for the honourable gentleman to use it. On his first go, I don't want to be too unkind and point out that on Monday we will be debating foreign affairs, as I said in my statement, and that's an opportunity to discuss all the matters relating to Iran. So his wish I am granting almost immediately as soon as I stand up. And we had a statement from my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Defence, earlier in the week. And then the consequences of the election. The honourable gentleman says we may become the recruiting sergeants for the SNP, which makes me wonder what he's complaining about, if that's what he thinks we're doing. I thought he'd be quite pleased. But what I would say is that he must not forget, an honourable and right honourable gentleman and ladies on the benches that he sits on must not forget there was a rather important election in 2014. And it was won by people who wanted to remain in the United Kingdom. There is not the division that he talks of. The United Kingdom is united, and that is what the people of Scotland voted for in their wisdom and good sense.